everyone, it's Froggy, and I'm back again with another episode of Hakuoki Kyoto Winds. So, we're going to continue on. Kondu's gunshot wound was in his right shoulder. The bullet pierced clean through him, shattering the bone, which required more treatment than I could have given him at the compounds. I was sweeping up in the common room when...
Oya, Yukimura-kun. Mada okite itan desu ka?
Oh, Sanan. Did you have any business here? If you're going to use this room, I'll leave.
いいえ、構いませんよ。君にも同席してもらった方がいいでしょう。
Huh? His words perplexed me, so I felt a little anxious. Just then, the most prominent Shinsengumi captains began filing into the common room. What were they about to discuss? My anxiety was starting to grow stronger.
みんな揃ってるみてえだな。
沖田くんの姿が見当たらないようですが。
あいつには聞かせる必要はねえ。もし掃除に渡しちまったら、身の危険も顧みずに近藤さんの仇を取りに行くに決まってるからな。
それが彼の望みならば、そうさせてあげるべきなのでは。土方くんは相変わらず優しすぎますよ。
俺たちに一体何の用なんだ。いつ戦が始まるかもわからねえ今わざわざ呼び出したってことはまさか。
そのまさかですよ。君たちにどうしても渡しておかなくてはならないものがありまして。
In his hands was an object wrapped in a fine cloth that he slowly unwrapped before all of us. As I saw what was inside of his hands, I gasped and clasped my hands over my mouth.
それは落ち水ですか？
その通りです。我々は新選組幹部としてこの薬の研究を受け入れ、今まで実験を続けてきたことについて最後まで責任を取らなくてはなりません。何より近藤さんのように怪我をして剣を震えなくなったり、最悪の場合命を落とすことだってあり得るのです。この薬はそんな時必ずや役に立ってくれるはずです。
三男さん、あんた俺たちを薬の実験道具にしようってのか？
今の状況で幹部大使の誰か一人でも欠けては困ると言っているだけですよ。
ふざけんじゃねえ！俺はこんな薬に頼ってまで生きながらえたくはねえぜ。
Negakura barked his indignation to Sanan's proposal, and then he stormed off.
お守り代わりってところかね。この薬を飲むような状況にならないことを祈りたいが。
Inoue spoke softly as his fingers pinched the vial and held it close to his eyes.
お借りします。
まあ使うことはねえと思うが一応受け取っとくぜ。
Both Saito and Harada grabbed a vial, and they slipped it into their respective pockets.
土方くん。
Up until now, Hijikata had crossed his arms and silently observed Sanan's speech.
責任を取らなきゃならねえか。まあ、確かにその通りだよな。
His eyes looked troubled, but he reached for the serum and slipped it into his pocket as well.
それでは今夜はこれで解散とします。私の行為が無にならないよう祈っていますよ。
After Sanan had finished, the captains all bowed and left the room, and Sanan turned towards me.
雪村くん、分かっていると思いますが、今夜のことは他の大使には決して口外しないように。いいですね。
Timidly, I nodded my head, and Sanan waited for a second before nodding silently and leaving the room. What could I do? The serum created by my father was now in the hands of the captains. I shuddered at the thought of them drinking it. The common room was practically deserted, and the mood was somber as we listened for updates. As I'd left the common room, I walked past the courtyard to head to my room. I found Yamazaki standing alone in contemplation. He gazed longingly into the sky, as if searching for answers amongst the stars. He didn't seem to notice as I'd walked closer to him. This seemed rather out of character for Yamazaki. I softly spoke to him so as not to alert him. "Good evening, Yamazaki. Is everything okay?" As I'd spoken out, Yamazaki finally turned to acknowledge me nearby. He glanced in my direction, and his expression remained stern as he looked into my eyes.
いや、なんでもない。俺はこれで失礼する。
With that said, Yamazaki walked off. I wonder if Yamazaki is all right. I was, of course, concerned about him, but tonight there wasn't much room in my heart for concern. I rushed back to my room.
局長を襲った刺客の正体はまだつかめないのか。どうせ薩長の奴らに決まってるぜ。卑怯な真似を。
Ever since the attack on Kondu, the atmosphere at the Fushimi Magistrate's office had been tense, to say the least. I felt it increase as I stepped into the meeting room, carrying tea for the captains. Here's your tea.
お、ありがとうな。そこに置いといてくれ。
I seemed to have walked in on a serious discussion. All around the room were tense, drawn faces.
で、今後どうするつもりなんだ？薩摩の奴らは政権返上だけじゃ飽き足らず、徳川家が持ってる領地も何もかも返せって言ってやがるんだろ？どう考えても戦を始めるための口実作りとしか思えねえぜ。今のうちに戦う準備を進めておくに越したことはね
え。だろうな。奴ら年若い天使様を担ぎ上げて我が物顔で朝廷に出入りしてやがる。で、そいつらとの戦の準備をどうするかだが。
三男さんは羅刹隊の増強を主張してらっしゃるようですが。
A memory of the other day came back to me. Sandon offered the water of life to all of the captains, and they accepted it.
俺は反対だ。これからの戦は不逞老子を取り締まってた頃とは違う。敵味方入り乱れて戦う中で連中の手綱をうまく取れるとは思えねえ。戦力にはなるが危険すぎるぜ。
だな。何より人道的に見て問題があるだろう。
では他にどんな策がある？他の者の意見に異を唱えるのであれば代案を出すべきだと思うが。
だから俺らだって考えてんだろ。そんなすぐいい案が出たら苦労しねえよ。
副長はどう思われます？
Hijikata furrowed his brow and frowned.
とりあえずもう少し考えさせてくれ。敵の出方を見なきゃ何とも言えねえし、幕府側の意向もあるからな。
Kondu's injury had put everyone on edge, especially with the war inching closer day by day. What was going to become of the Shinsengumi as well as the Fury Corps? December 20th, 1867. It was decided that Kondu and Okita were to be moved to Osaka, where Dr. Matsumoto was. Kondu had required serious surgery and treatments, while Okita needed to treat his tuberculosis. Only a few people had caught on to Okita's condition initially, but when it came time for him to leave, it was as if a dark cloud hovered over all of us. The departure of these two leaders brought solemnity and sadness to us all. Tensions were escalating in the Fushimi Magistrate. War could break out at any second. Since the chief had been shot, everyone seemed on edge at every corner. I guess, though, it can't be helped. Despite an intense investigation, no one could pin down a suspect. This only served to frustrate the soldiers further. Since coming to the magistrate, however, it seemed like the only way that I could contribute was to make rice balls and yuzuki for the men to eat. But since everyone was constantly occupied or on the move, gathering a group to eat was hard. I found myself with nothing to do after cleaning up the kitchen after dinner.
Yukimura-kun!
Oh, Yamazaki. A sharp voice came from behind me, and there stood Yamazaki in his ninja suit. Oh, you must have been out. Wow, you worked pretty late, huh? I had assumed he was performing his scout duties, looking for any sign of a culprit responsible for the attempt on Kondo's life. I bowed to him calmly.
俺のことはどうだっていい。問題なのは雪村君のことだ。
Huh?
なぜまだ今日に残っている？ここはもうすぐ戦場になるぞ。
Yamazaki inhaled deeply, and he continued with a reserved expression.
君は近藤局長や沖田さんについて大坂に行ったとばかり思っていた。俺があえて意見せずとも土方副長は必ず君を戦場から遠ざけると思っていたんだ。
There was a hint of stress in his tone, and his exhaustion was coming through.
今の副長には雪村君を気にする余裕がないのかもしれないな。
Perhaps that is the case. Since Kondo was shot, Hijikata has been all over the place. I nodded, and he immediately resumed speaking in a serious tone.
今からでも遅くない。君は近藤局長たちの後を追い、大坂に向かうべきだと思う。同行に許可が必要なら、俺が土方副長に掛け合ってくる。
There is no need. I'll be fine.
何が大丈夫なものか。
He raised his voice, his frustration gaining.
君の事情は知っている。高堂さんも見つかっていないし、今日に残りたいのは理解できる。君が鬼と呼ばれる者たちに狙われていることも、新選組がその君を守ると決めたことも分かっている。
Yamazaki. I had never seen him in this infuriated state, let alone show this much emotion.
だが、今日はじき戦場になる。とどまるのはあまりに危険だ。
Just from the way he'd been flailing his limbs and gesticulating, I could sense that he was upset. So it's true. We're going to war. I'd known it was coming, but now war was finally at our doorstep. I muttered this to myself, and Yamazaki grabbed a hold of my shoulders as he responded.
まず間違いないだろう。体内にも楽観視している者はいるかもしれないが、例えば薩摩藩陣営はこの伏見奉行所に対しても大砲を設置し始めている。
What?
薩長軍は士気も高い。数に頼っている幕府軍では苦戦を強いられるだろう。
The possible outcomes Yamazaki was describing were both pointing to one thing: devastation. I was sure that Yamazaki still held some hope that the shogunate was superior to the Satsuma or the Chosu. However, because he'd witnessed their preparations firsthand as a scout, his perspective was better than anyone's.
加えて薩摩藩は最新の銃砲を備えている。局地的な戦いの結果は俺にもわからない。
The rare typo. Will. Too many L's. Although I'm sure Yamazaki made an effort to comfort me, he was very obviously shaken.
しかし勝つのは我々だろう。動員数では幕府側が圧倒的だ。それでも万一ということがある。だから君は大坂行きの準備を。
Wait. Yamazaki was rushing through his attempt to convince me, but I interrupted him. I'm not the only one in danger here. Any one of us could be at any time. Besides, you of all people should be careful considering you keep going to the enemy lines. That's almost asking for danger to happen.
俺のことはいい。だが、君が戦いに巻き込まれる必要はないだろう。
Yamazaki smiled wryly before sighing deeply.
俺には新選組のために危険を探るという役目がある。いざという時は死ぬことで味方に脅威を知らすのも任務の一つだ。
What?
そんな顔しないでくれ。俺は観察方についたあの日から命の使い道を決めてきたんだ。
There was so much to say, but I couldn't collect my thoughts quick enough. Then I became desperate to tell him something, but the words frothed as they struggled to come out of my mouth before. Then, Why don't you go to Osaka, Yamazaki?
落ち着いてくれ、雪村君。どうして俺が大坂に？
You're the Shinsengumi's doctor, so you know everyone's condition better than anyone. His eyes grew wide in surprise as I continued. The men going to Osaka need your help too, Yamazaki. I want you to be beside Kondo and Okita more than anything too. I wanted him to know that he was worth more to us than just being a lookout in the city. I knew my voice was teething on the edge of being irrational, but I had to tell him because I didn't want him to stay in a dangerous place. Immediately, Yamazaki began to calm down, and he responded in a peaceful tone.
大坂には松本先生が待っている。彼らを見るなら俺以上に適任だ。それでも局長や沖田さんが心配なら、なおさら君が向かうべきだと思うが。
Well...
俺を手伝ってくれた君なら、十分な看護を行えるはずだ。それに、戦える人間と戦えない人間、どちらが残るべきかは明白だろう。
His words tore through me. I dug my fingers into my hand as I gripped a tight fist, and I stared back into his eyes. I'm aware of what dangers await me. But even then, I still want to stay here. Because I want to be helpful, I'm scared to leave you. Well, we're going to make this choice in the next episode, so I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you want to see more videos from me, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.